Cleveland Browns, the real story. Nobody's talking about. Let's get one thing straight. I'm not here to rehash the Watson saga. Anyone who's been paying even half attention to this franchise already knows how that movie ends, no matter how elegantly the front office keeps tiptoeing around it in press conferences. And I'm not going to waste your time on the Diggs trade rumor carousel, which keeps spinning around on its own schedule with basically zero connection to anything actually happening on the ground. What I am here to talk about is something I stumbled onto this week while digging through practice footage. No flashy headline, no transaction wire announcement, just me sitting with some clips, doing the kind of unglamorous off-season work that mostly involves sifting through mountains of manufactured storylines to find something that actually means something. When I landed on the Cleveland footage, I stopped dead, rewound, watched again, then a third time, because something in those clips had a different feel to it. A texture you don't usually get from the sanitized content teams pump out to keep their media machines humming. And the more time I spent with it, the more certain I became. The most important thing coming out of Cleveland's minicamp right now has almost nothing to do with any single player's highlight moment. It has everything to do with what all those moments together are telling us about the kind of organization being quietly assembled inside that building. That's what we need to dig into. But first, and this part matters, let me set the right frame, because without it, everything I'm about to say just becomes more off-season noise dressed up in a blazer. Minicamp is helmets and shorts. Full stop. There's no live pass rush breathing down anyone's neck. There's no real desperation. The kind that shows up when a defensive back is genuinely fighting for his livelihood, and that raw survival energy completely changes how a quarterback reads a defense or how a receiver battles through contact at the top of a route. What you're watching in these sessions is a carefully managed evaluation setting. It is not professional football. Anyone trying to hand you hard conclusions from 3 days of controlled walkthroughs is either not paying close enough attention or has a vested interest in your certainty. I'll be upfront about that. And honestly, that kind of transparency is something you don't get enough of in football media, where hot takes age about as well as fish on a summer sidewalk. But here's what minicamp genuinely does give you, if you know where to look: physical readiness, positional ceiling, and most importantly, the fingerprints of private preparation. All those months of invisible, undocumented work done alone in empty gyms and practice facilities before anyone turned a camera on. That kind of preparation has a funny habit of announcing itself loudly the moment real evaluation begins, no matter how quietly it was kept. That's the lens I'm working through here. And Cleveland gave me plenty to examine. Denzel Ward deserves real, unhurried attention. I'm not going to squeeze his evaluation into a throwaway line inside a depth chart discussion, because I genuinely think he matters more to what this offense can become than the national coverage has bothered to reflect. His physical profile hit you immediately when the footage started. Long, big, filling out that outside receiver spot with the kind of presence this offense has been quietly missing for so long that most people have honestly stopped noticing the hole. The moment clips leaked, the Josh Gordon comparisons came flooding in. And look, I get it completely. A boundary target who physically imposes himself on routes? Who earns genuine defensive respect rather than the comfortable soft coverage you give a guy nobody's actually worried about? Who forces coverage decisions rather than just reacting to whatever the offense throws at the defense? That profile represents a real, specific absence that Cleveland has been dragging around like a ball and chain on its ceiling. Boston's physical makeup addresses that in a way that deserves to be said plainly, without a bunch of qualifying asterisks around it. But the physical stuff isn't the story. The root tape is where the real story lives. And it keeps getting boiled down to a single sentence when it deserves a full chapter. Boston was not winning those minicamp drills just because he's a big human being. He wasn't simply using his frame as a battering ram to bully defensive backs into giving up separation. What he was showing, at a developmental stage where his technical polish is still obviously a work in progress, was genuine route intelligence. He was using his body to establish positional leverage before his breaks, not scrambling to recover after them. He was planting tendencies in his release stems early in drills and then running cuts that directly contradicted what he'd been showing coverage all session. He was processing pre-snap and en route in a way that separates receivers who genuinely understand this position from athletic prospects, who are still figuring out what the position fundamentally asks of them. And here's the part that I keep circling back to, because it's important. Route sophistication at that level doesn't materialize from thin air on day one of a professional evaluation. A coaching staff doesn't install that in 3 days of walkthroughs while they're still learning which name goes with which face. That kind of technical foundation gets built through months of deliberate, repetitive, solitary work. Empty facilities, private sessions, rep after rep in environments where nobody's filming anything and the only thing pushing you forward is your own honest reckoning with what the opportunity demands of you. Boston walked into Cleveland with that work already done, and it showed, the way genuinely prepared players always show. The first time they step into a professional setting and the preparation they've already banked quietly separates them from the rest of the room. For Shedeur Sanders, the practical implications here are concrete and real. The most persistent structural problem, handcuffing this offense, has been the absence of a boundary receiver who wins reliably enough on the outside to force defensive coordinators to actually commit coverage resources to the perimeter. When you don't have that player, the defense gets to cheat. Everyone rotates toward the middle, shades shift to where the ball actually goes, and suddenly, the whole operation becomes predictable and beatable. Boston's combination of physical presence and developing route intelligence stacked alongside Shedeur's documented accuracy and his willingness to attack tight windows creates a coverage headache this offense simply hasn't been able to generate for a meaningful stretch of time. And that matters in ways that don't always show up in box scores. It shows up in play calling freedom, in third down conversion rates, in what becomes available late in close games when the defense already knows where the ball is going because the offense only has one receiver they genuinely have to worry about. That's a stranglehold situation. Boston's arrival is a real answer to it. Now, KC conception, and I want to give you the honest picture here, both sides, because the comfortable version and the accurate version are different enough that you deserve to have both. The drops were a genuine problem. I'm not going to soften that by leaning too hard on minicamp context, because drops in professional football aren't just negative statistical events. They're psychological events with real operational consequences that linger long after the play is over. Every time a receiver lets a catchable ball slip through, it creates friction between him and his quarterback that extends well beyond that single moment. It quietly influences play calling in ways that never appear anywhere in a game plan document. And over time, this is the practical part. It chips away at the operational trust a quarterback must carry in a target to confidently go to him when coverage is tight. And the game is genuinely on the line. Conception's hands need to get significantly more reliable. Saying anything less direct would be doing you a disservice. That's where he is. That's the real challenge sitting directly in front of him right now. But collapsing the entire evaluation to the drops conversation is its own kind of analytical laziness. And I'm not willing to do it. The route tape demands its own separate accounting. The way Conception was already processing his releases off the line, the movement concepts working through the stems of his routes before his breaks, the quickness he was generating at the top of his cuts. There was a connection in those sessions, a touchdown rep, where he created separation through correct route execution and precise timing, not by outrunning anybody, by making the route concept function exactly as it was designed to function against the coverage he'd read pre-snap. That distinction carries enormous weight when you're projecting where a receiver's ceiling actually sits. Getting open because the route worked correctly is a fundamentally different statement about a player than getting open because he was faster than the defender. The first one tells you the football intelligence is real and developing. The second just tells you the guy can run. What Conception showed fell clearly into the first category. His feet are already doing things that give a coaching staff genuine developmental material. The hands need to catch up to everything else, and that's the work ahead. But work being built on top of a legitimate technical foundation is a completely different situation from a receiver with bad hands and nothing underneath. That distinction matters enormously when you're trying to project what someone can become, rather than just cataloging what they currently are. Taran Green, let me get out in front of where certain corners of the coverage are trying to take his minicamp moments before that storyline develops more momentum than the evidence can actually support. The arm talent is real. The mobility adds a dimension traditional pocket passers genuinely cannot provide. The physical presence he brought to those early sessions generated real excitement, and that excitement deserves honest acknowledgement. But an honest evaluation requires holding both things at the same time without letting one cancel the other. The mechanical release carries a length and a looseness that's going to need sustained, serious refinement to hold up consistently against professional pass rush. He overthrew a tight end. He sailed throws past their intended targets in separate sequences. None of that is particularly shocking given where he is. Green was a 6th-round pick specifically because the ceiling comes attached to an extended developmental timeline, and his current floor is exactly where 6th-round developmental quarterbacks tend to land at the beginning of their professional lives. That's not a dig. It's just a description of where he is, and I want to be completely straight here, because I can feel where certain segments of this coverage want to take Green's minicamp moments, and it needs to be said without any diplomatic padding. An encouraging rep in a no-contact walkthrough setting does not crack open any meaningful conversation about the Cleveland Browns' starting quarterback position. Not slightly, not in any direction, not by any logical stretch of the imagination. Green's physical tools are genuinely interesting. His long-term development as a backup option may produce something worth tracking over years. But a 6th-round developmental quarterback who is still in the early stages of translating raw physical gifts into consistent, professional mechanics is not entering any legitimate discussion about the starting role on a team that has committed its entire organizational future to a different quarterback. Shedeur Sanders is who Cleveland is building toward. That conclusion is baked into every significant resource decision this franchise has made throughout this offseason. The offensive line money, the receiver additions, the structural logic running through every major move. One promising rep in a controlled environment doesn't touch a single piece of that architecture. And it's important to say that clearly before the narrative builds traction, it hasn't earned. Here's where I want to spend the most time, because I think this is genuinely the biggest story coming out of Cleveland's minicamp, and the one least likely to get the serious attention it deserves from the national conversation. Stop looking at the individual pieces for a second. Look at the organizational logic connecting them. Boston addresses the boundary receiver absence that has quietly put a ceiling on this offense's potential for years, not as a projection or a hopeful guess, but as an identifiable physical and technical profile that showed up with the preparation work already done and visible. Conception's movement qualities and speed create coverage allocation problems in the intermediate zones, specifically in the areas where Shedeur has shown the most precision and the most comfort operating. The rebuilt offensive line represents hundreds of millions of dollars committed toward giving a franchise quarterback the protective infrastructure he actually needs to operate at his ceiling. rather than whatever compromised survival mode an unstable front five forces a quarterback down to. These aren't generic roster moves plugging generic holes. They are deliberate, specific investments in an offensive vision that was designed around one quarterback's particular skill set and then resourced with the seriousness of an organization that genuinely believes in what it's building. That's what intentional franchise construction actually looks like from the inside. It's a completely different category from the transactional roster shuffling that teams stuck in perpetual transition tend to produce year after year. And the difference is visible in the coherence of the decisions when you look at them together rather than one at a time. It's the kind of thing that's easy to miss when you're consuming it piece by piece, but hits you all at once when you step back and look at the whole picture. What this minicamp's competitive atmosphere also reveals, and I find this among the most meaningful signals coming out of Cleveland right now, is the internal culture actively being shaped inside that facility. The earliest days of rookie minicamp are remarkably effective at exposing one specific thing: who arrived with their preparation already completed, and who showed up expecting to figure things out in real time while the evaluation was already running. Boston's root intelligence on day one didn't get installed in 3 days of walkthrough sessions. It was built over months of individual work in facilities where nothing was being recorded, driven entirely by his own internal reckoning with what this moment requires. Conception's movement sophistication through his release patterns tells the exact same story about the exact same fundamental choice. These are players who treated the offseason before their first professional evaluation as a genuine competitive opportunity rather than just an administrative waiting period. AZ, bureaucratic inconvenience before the real stuff starts. And that choice is immediately visible to anyone who's watched enough football to recognize the difference between players who arrived prepared and talented players who arrived banking on their instincts to carry them through the first impression. Organizations that are serious about building something lasting pay very close attention to exactly that distinction. The fact that Cleveland is attracting the former kind of player isn't a coincidence. It's a reflection of what's being built. Let me put the whole picture together, because I want you to see the complete thing rather than just the pieces. Denzel Boston processing through route combinations with a technical sophistication that only deliberate preparation produces. Conception showing movement qualities that give the coaching staff genuine developmental material to work with, even as his ball tracking reliability demands dedicated attention. A rookie class competing with the visible urgency of players who understand that professional opportunities are finite and that this particular organization is not running a charity evaluation for anyone who happened to get drafted. And standing at the center of all of it, a quarterback who spent an entire first professional season operating under conditions that were structurally misaligned with his success. Conditions that would have fractured a player with less internal clarity about who he is and what he's capable of. A player who demonstrated throughout all of it the character and competitive consistency that compel organizations to place their entire futures in someone's hands. The Watson narrative has consumed enough oxygen. The Diggs trade speculation keeps resurfacing on a media schedule that appears genuinely disconnected from any actual evidence a move is coming. The Taran Green storyline that certain corners want to inflate into something substantial is not supported by what the evaluation actually shows. And people deserve to hear that plainly. Those are not the real stories coming out of Cleveland right now. The real story is on that practice field, being written one rep at a time, by receivers who showed up with their preparation already visible in their bodies and their technique, by rookies competing with the kind of urgency that only comes from genuinely understanding what's at stake, and by a coaching staff assembling an offense with specific architectural intention around a specific quarterback's specific abilities rather than collecting available pieces and hoping the scheme makes them coherent. The signal coming out of that facility is pointing towards something being constructed with genuine organizational conviction and real competitive ambition. Not another transitional year. Not another survival cycle while the actual opportunity stays just out of reach. A foundation being built deliberately, specifically, and with the investment decisions to actually back the stated intention up. What this minicamp footage is telling you about Cleveland, if you watch it with the right frame, is that the assembly is further along and moving faster than most of the national conversation has figured out yet.